With just about 2 weeks before the midterms, Joe Biden thought it would be very important to sit down with youth influencers and, I suppose, try to earn younger votes. I don't think Democrats know exactly what they're talking about. And so one of the big stories is that Joe Biden came out in defense of sex change surgery and puberty blockers for kids. Now, the reason this story is particularly interesting is that recently in England, it looks like they're going to be moving away from puberty blockers for kids based on the fact that the scientific evidence shows it is actually more detrimental. There was a big story when the Tavistock Center shut down. I believe that was like a month or two ago. We now have a report coming out showing that they're basically saying, unless it's a study, we're not going to be giving kids these drugs. It's very, very bad. Now, I don't exactly know why Joe Biden thought this was a midterm winning issue. I got to be honest. I think a lot of people are shocked by this. And I think the choice of trans person to bring on for the interview was also deeply offensive to many trans people and women. Joe Biden invited Dylan Mulvaney, who is seen by many as mocking trans people and mocking women, to ask a question about gender affirming care. That's what they call it. And Joe Biden said that he thinks that states shouldn't be allowed to ban it, that it is a moral issue. And of course, we're getting a response, but this isn't new information. Joe Biden had already come out in the past saying he doesn't think states should be allowed to ban states from prohibiting this. Again, it's kind of strange because when you look at Europe, when you look at Scandinavian countries and now England, they're already saying like, hey, this is bad. It's not working. So if we want to be good stewards of our fellow man, humans, let's be politically correct. Well, then we should follow the science, right? And the science right now says this reassignment surgery and medication for kids is not a good thing. And that's why in several countries that many on the left look up to, they're moving away from this. Now, the story here isn't just that Joe Biden is defending sex changes for children, but it's also that many people are outraged about Dylan Mulvaney. So we're going to get into this. And here's the point that I want to make. We had Blair White on Timcast IRL recently. Blair White, of course, is a trans woman who is offended by Dylan Mulvaney. Many people have criticized Dylan because the persona put on by this individual is not that of a trans person or a woman, but some have likened it to the blackface version of womanhood or woman face. Now, this is Dylan Mulvaney specifically. That is what I'm trying to say is this is divorced from the issue of trans rights. Look, we here at Timcast, we have no problem with any individual who wants to live their true lives and be themselves and all that stuff. The concern we have is, are we actually going to be hurting children? And that's a separate issue. Dylan Mulvaney, I'll say this. Be trans, more power to you. Congratulations. And I wish you the best. Seriously, long and healthy life. And I got to be honest, too. The gags done by Dylan, I think are funny. But the question is, what are you supposed to be laughing at? And why do I find it funny? Well, here's the issue. Many people have basically said the way Dylan Mulvaney acts, which has garnered widespread attention, is akin to blackface, such as wearing high heels to go hiking and fainting and falling down when seeing a bug. This is like putting on a costume, pretending to be a woman, and then mocking every stereotype that a woman is. That's not what trans people do, right? And that's why you have to be careful about this. I think someone like Dylan Mulvaney is actually intending to mock women and trans people, not try and make this. I'll put it this way. I don't think Dylan Mulvaney's character is intended to portray a moderate, normal view of a trans person or woman. I think Dylan Mulvaney is insulting trans people. I think Dylan Mulvaney is intentionally trying to make trans people look bad. And I think Dylan Mulvaney is actively mocking what it means to be a woman. It's very much like watching SNL or Mad TV or Family Guy or South Park. South Park is a good example when they did the episode with Strong Woman, and it was Macho Man Randy Savage being like, I'm a woman. What Dylan Mulvaney is doing is akin to that. At least that's what many people are saying, and that's how I view it. Dylan goes out into the famous video wearing high heels in the woods. Trans people and women don't do that. That's not a real thing. It's making them look stupid. And that's the problem. If we want to be truly respectful and say, look, Blair White, for instance, I think is fantastic. Blair brought up that actually on Timcast IRL, Blair's been on 4 times. And that's only the first time the other last week that we actually talked about trans issues, which was Dylan Mulvaney. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I don't care. Blair is a political commentator who talks about politics. Trans is irrelevant. So, Blair, more power to you. But Dylan Mulvaney creates this character that makes trans people look like, that mocks them. I'll put it that way. Let's play this clip, talk the politics first, and then we'll talk about why this one was so offensive to so many people. So here's the clip from RNC Research.
Do you think states should have a right to ban gender-affirming health care?
I don't think any state or anybody should have the right to do that. As a moral question and as a legal question. I just think it's wrong.
Do you think states should have a right to ban gender-affirming health care?
I don't think any state or anybody should have the right to do that. As a moral question and as a legal question.
So I want to let that play a couple times. Now I want to show you this real quick. This is a viral thread from Sonia Sodha, Observer columnist and chief leader writer, Prospect editorial board. She points out with this new update from the UK, only prescribing puberty blockers as part of a formal research study given the lack of evidence on the risks and benefits of hormone treatment for children and young people. That's big. So this is NHS England published draft specifications for specialist services for children with gender dysphoria following CAS interim review yesterday. Very positive development and a move away from unevidenced affirmative model pushed by mermaids, thread follows. So to put it simply, in the UK, they are now following suit to these other Scandinavian countries, again, which the left often tout as the bastions of good healthcare, saying that the affirmative model, like Biden just supported, is unevidenced and they are moving away from it. This is from June 15th, 2022. Biden signs order to protect transgender children as Texas continues efforts to restrict gender-affirming care. The executive order calls on the U.S. Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services to increase access to gender-affirming healthcare and develop ways to counter state efforts aimed at limiting such treatments for transgender minors. Here's the issue. In this new report, they found a clinical approach reflecting evidence that in most prepubertal children, gender incongruence does not persist into adolescence. That's a very important point. Joe Biden has come out 2 weeks before the midterms, pushing an issue that is not popular, that is not prescient. Look, I see a lot of people from the Republican Party, a lot of conservatives, a lot of Republicans. They're saying, look at this, Joe Biden is pushing this issue. And I'm like, well, look, I think this is a reason some people are switching from the Democratic Party and saying they don't want to vote for this. I think it's a strong issue if you're paying attention. Unevidenced, anti-scientific, and causing lasting damage to children. That's what the science shows in England, and I think Finland moved Sweden as well. And Joe Biden is pushing this without evidence. He's doing it because he thinks it's a popular issue, primarily among young people. It's not. Even Bill Maher came out and said, what is going on, Democrats? I understand you want to fight for these people, but there's like 300 of them. It's a good point. Now, you can make a point that the Democrats should not be basing their politics off of whether or not someone is deserving, whether or not someone is in large number. It really should be like, are you deserving of human rights? And of course, trans people are. The question is, why is Joe Biden coming out pushing an issue that is not only not popular among the American public, not prescient, but also harmful? That's the question. I think the Democrats have lost the plot outright. I'll give you an example as to why I think they're just in free fall and it's become insane. Joe Biden comes out and says he's going to get us off fossil fuels. He campaigned on it for the 2020 election. He's now dumping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Okay, is that indicative of him trying to get us off fossil fuels? Perhaps. But then he goes to OPEC and begs them to keep pumping oil. Well, that's not getting us off fossil fuels. How could both views be true and correct at the same time? They can't. The Democrats don't know what they're campaigning on. Joe Biden's already got a viral video from this it's called Now This News town hall meeting where he gets asked about something and then he just answers with gibberish because the dude ain't all there. But these policies are surface level, vapid, superficial policies, seemingly popular among no one. Look, if Dylan Mulvaney putting on this character, making fun of trans people is what young people like to watch because they find it hilarious to mock trans people, then Joe Biden can entertain that all he wants. But, you know, it's not going to translate into votes. And we're already seeing a lot more. But as much as I was thinking, what's the issue we got to talk about here? Is it really this Dylan Mulvaney stuff? It's making Dylan Mulvaney more famous, I guess. The issue is it's the economy, stupid. That's it. So while I think this is an issue that a lot of people are going to look at and say this matters to me because they're hurting kids, I don't think it moves the needle all that much. Gas prices, dude. Crime. I got tons of videos and articles about crime. I got something for 1 p.m. that'll make your blood boil. Well, actually, it'll make you laugh, and then another story will make your blood boil. I'll just give you the gist because, there's a Seattle politician, a leftist, and someone keeps throwing feces on her lawn. And then the police are just like, we ain't doing nothing about it. So she's complaining. Like, that's the hypocrisy. They don't have anything to really campaign on. But here's where we get to. The propping up of this Dylan Mulvaney character. I want to say this, and I want people to understand. Dylan Mulvaney, in my view, is trying to mock trans people. And this is something that you got to understand, man. Dylan Mulvaney is making fun of trans people. I'll say it again. Trans people deserve dignity and respect. I'm a big fan of Blair White. I don't care how you choose to live your life. I want you to be healthy and happy. If you're an adult and you are experiencing some kind of incongruence with your gender and it's causing you extreme depression and pain, I hope you seek the assistance to help you live your true and full life. Blair seems to be doing that. Blair's hilarious. Blair's fantastic. And there's, of course, many other trans people. I've been to a bunch of events where I've seen Trump supporting trans people. I could literally care less about your life and your choices. But you know what I don't like? Dylan Mulvaney is creating a character to mock trans people and women. Amber Athey writes for Spectator World, "My womanhood is not your costume." Now, here's what I don't think. Or here's what I think. I think a lot of these conservatives don't understand that Dylan appears to be trying to insult trans people. You see what I mean? They're looking at they're looking at Dylan Mulvaney like Dylan is a trans person, and that's what trans people are like. And that to me is just bonkers because, Blair, I hate to say your name 50,000 times, but there are examples of trans people who don't do this. ContraPoints does not do this. All right, you familiar with Contra? ContraPoints isn't putting on high heels and prancing through the woods as a caricature of what trans people are. ContraPoints does intelligent political arguments. Blair White does intelligent political arguments, and they both discuss these issues. Dylan Mulvaney is intending to insult these people. Amber Athey says, "I don't have a bow in my hair, nor am I wearing a Barbie pink dress, but I'm still a woman because I was born one. I will always pray that people suffering from gender dysphoria are able to find peace with who they are. However, I do not have any sympathy for those who act as women using hackneyed stereotypes, pretend to speak for us, and then have the stones tell us we are the problem when we don't comply with their delusion." Okay. Amber says, "Such is the case with Dylan Mulvaney. Despite not actually being a woman or even only identifying as such for less than a year, Mulvaney has somehow become the woman du jour." I think, look, there's a viral story. High school teacher, you probably saw it, with the big old knockers, the big fake fetish toys. This individual, many people have said, is trans and is wearing prosthetic breasts. I say, no, those are not prosthetic breasts. Those are sex toys for adults. Because there are prosthetics for women who undergo mastectomies due to cancer and other, surgical intervention. And these tend to be normal sized chests. And it's sometimes a woman gets a single mastectomy, meaning she'll have breast cancer in one breast, it gets removed, and she still has one, so they want to make it even. It's a prosthetic. If you get your finger blown off, you might wear something on your hand. Your nose gets damaged, you might wear something. I understand that. This high school teacher is wearing large toys meant for adult play in public. Now, a lot of people seem to think this individual is actually trolling, and that makes sense. Why would someone wear these gigantic toys? The theory is the individual was actually anti-woke and is trying to mock the system, was threatened with getting fired. Now, I don't know if that's true. It's a single 4chan post. And either way, doing this in front of children is inappropriate. What Dylan Mulvaney is doing is very similar. So take a look at this article here. A video you may have seen before. I'm going to play it for you.
Day 66, being a girl, and today I'm in nature. Trees, I love them. Water, lakes, I love them.
Okay, so I'm going to pause right there. The I love them is a stereotype caricature of a woman. This is clearly intending to mock women and trans people. Clearly.
Heels, they're my hiking heels. I love them.
Hiking heels, I love them. Trans women don't go hiking in high heels, and women don't go hiking in heels. There are tons of rock climbing women who wear normal shoes. There are tons of women who go hiking who wear normal shoes. You see my point? I made it before, but Joe Biden is bringing this person who is, imagine if Joe Biden brought Rachel Dolezal to the White House to talk about issues facing black people. You'd be like, come on, man. We know she's a white woman who is that's the issue. The thing about Rachel Dolezal is that even as someone who's transracial, as she calls it, she does not put on a caricature to this extreme of a degree.
Okay, come on.
The hooting and ho 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 like that. I'm telling you, man, I think Dylan Mulvaney is trying to insult trans people, and I think it's a troll. Blair says she knows people who know Dylan who say it's not a troll, it's real. Maybe, but I'm sorry. When you look at your average trans person, you look at Caitlyn Jenner, look at Blair, look at ContraPoints, prominent trans people. I use Contra as an example of the left. Blair's the white. Caitlyn Jenner as just a mainstream personality. There's even a bunch of trans actors. They don't act like this. Why is Joe Biden bringing on someone to mock this? And I'm sure many of you have seen this video already. Love them.
Coconut water, love it. Not an ad, just love it.
I don't understand what this is
Wind
supposed
turbine,
to be.
love it.
But it really
Meadows,
comes to
love 'em.
a head here. The hills are alive, and then this.
I'm scared of getting Lyme disease. Love ya.
Bug, it says. And then Dylan stumbles and falls over like a scared, dainty woman who is too afraid. And what you get is a complete mockery of trans people, a complete mockery of women, and defense from the left. Here you go. From the Los Angeles Blade. Well, NewsGuard says it's fake news, but sure, here's what they wrote. Anti-trans vitriol toward TikTok star Dylan Mulvaney ignites boycott. Cassandra McDonald, a longtime alt-right troll, suggested that trans identities are the gender equivalent of blackface. Okay, I'd like to point out Cassandra is Puerto Rican, so I'm not sure that white nationalists, are Cassandra's not all right. And I do love that they pointed out that they add me to the story saying, Cassandra's boss called it mansplaining. Cassandra says this is the gender equivalent of blackface at this point. But it's worse than that. I'm going to say it again. Dylan, you are trying to mock trans people, and it is deeply offensive. I think you need to leave trans people alone. I think you need to respect trans people. And I think what Dylan is doing here would be akin to painting his face black and then running around screaming about fried chicken or watermelon, the most extreme of offensive stereotypes. Dylan is mocking trans people, and I can't say it enough. And the funny thing is, here I'll tell you exactly why I think this. Okay? Look at all the conservatives that are coming out saying, look at this trans person mocking women. And I'm like, guys, there are trans people. They don't act like this. You've seen ContraPoints videos and you've argued the politics. You've met Blair White, your fans. Dylan Mulvaney does not represent trans people. Dylan Mulvaney represents mockery of women and trans people. But of course, perhaps this was the troll all along. To create a high-profile character as insulting as possible to trans people, to get a ton of attention on TikTok because a bunch of young people are laughing at this, laughing at the idea that this is what a trans person is. And then Joe Biden, being too stupid to realize it, invites this person to the White House to belittle, besmirch, and mock trans people again. Think about that. Imagine if Joe Biden invited Rachel Dolezal to the White House. You'd have people being like, dude, Rachel Dolezal is not black. And Biden's being like, we're here to talk about all sorts of identities. And too stupid to realize that you are being played. Here's what ends up happening. The conservative argument criticizing trans people is emboldened by what Dylan Mulvaney does. That's why I don't believe it's genuine. I'm like, how could it be that such an absurd insult, such a powerful insult to trans people is considered actually being mainstream trans? When, again, ContraPoints, if you've not seen Contra's YouTube channel, ContraPoints is a calm, rational, sane individual talking about political issues and making good arguments, becoming very prominent and popular. Why isn't Joe Biden inviting ContraPoints to the White House to talk about trans issues? That's my point. Because in the end of this, conservatives have Dylan Mulvaney to point to criticize all of transgender ideology. I'll put it this way. I'll wrap it up with this. Joe Biden coming out and saying he wants sex changes for kids is appalling because the science does not support it. And in Europe, they're backing away from it. I think if you're an adult, you can choose to live the way you want to live. And you know what? If it turns out that Dylan Mulvaney really does act like this, fine, so be it. But the idea that the White House would prop up someone putting on a caricature that insults women and trans people, that just goes to show the ignorance and the emptiness that is the left's politics. And then the Los Angeles Blade outright defending this. Let me show you something. If they have the
Now I know I can find love.
There's a clip from this podcast. I'm going to try and pull it up so I can.
And we're on day 167 of girlhood.
Mr. Hollywood, I'm right here.
Hollywood, zoom in on that.
Zoom in on that. Come on, guys. Let me go back to that and show you that one more time.
And we're on day 167 of girlhood.
Mr. Hollywood, I'm right.
Dylan is like putting his hands up against his chest like he's shaking his boobs for a Hollywood producer. I genuinely believe that Dylan Mulvaney is not trans and that Dylan Mulvaney is trying to insult trans people. And because of the fear of cancel culture, Dylan Mulvaney is getting away with it. I'm sorry. You're not going to convince me, having actually met and watched videos from trans people, that this is supposed to be an accurate representation of who these people are. You know what? The left makes at this point. They say that the bathroom bill stuff is wrong. That people should be able to use the bathrooms they choose to identify with. And they point out that for the past several decades, trans women and trans men have used whatever bathroom without issue, and no one's ever noticed. I mean, maybe sometimes, but no one's ever asked about it. No one's ever thought about it. A trans woman would walk into a woman's bathroom, and people might, be like, is that whatever? And the person goes into a stall. What Dylan is doing is the exact opposite of exactly what the left argues about with trans people, that they've been passing and among us for so long we never noticed. Dylan is creating a caricature of you, like wearing blackface. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.